So I have had this box from 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop sitting in my craft room for a couple days now. And I've been wanting to open it, but I've been sick. And I don't like being on camera and recording my voice while I'm sick. So now that I'm finally feeling better enough that I'm not coughing, let's open up this box. I already know what's in here, but you're going to be surprised. Unless, of course, you're on the 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop newsletter, then you know what's in here because they sent out a newsletter blast about this brand new product. And are you ready? I'm really excited about this. All right, let's take away the packaging and my shipping. And I do like that they throw a little cutesy note in there just to kind of inspire you. And not gonna lie, love a free product, which is what this little bonus extra sheet of cardstock is. And they put a little free gift sticker on it so you know it's a free gift. All right, now to the good stuff. Introducing Encore. Encore is the brand new line of textured cardstock from 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop. We look at all that cardstock. It's like a beautiful rainbow of colors. And I am going to make a project with it. I do love that they have this little key for the back, so if you fall in love with a color, you can find out the color name and work with it. This is a textured cardstock, but it's not as thick and heavy as some of the cardstocks I've worked with. It's more flexible, and I'm hoping that means it's gonna cut a lot better. Have you ever had cardstock that kind of looks like it got chewed up when it went through your die cutting machine? Well, the thought process with this stuff is that it's specially formulated so that it's going to cut better. I am going to do a birthday card and I'm going to do it in kind of shades of blue. So for my card that I'm making, I did grab a sheet of basil cardstock that I have. They also sell this at 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop, but that's kind of heavier and stiffer for the base of the card. Then I'm going to use this array of blue shades, and I'm just going from a dark blue into a lighter blue, and that's going to be my actual card. I will show you how I'm going to design the card, and then we're going to cut the card, and you're going to see exactly how thin these details of the card are, just so that you get a real sense of how tiny this can cut. Oh, and when you see this video and you're like, oh, I have to get this cardstock, make sure to use coupon code SeanM10 at checkout, and then you're going to save 10%. Today, I want to talk about stencil fonts. So, a stencil font is going to be one that has little lines in it, and those lines are going to make it so that your centers don't fall out of your letters. And what I mean by that is let's look at, so the I doesn't need a line in it because it's all one piece. But something like an O, if you cut that all one piece with your die cutting machine, it's going to cut that outside ring and that inside ring, and that inside piece is going to fall out. So in order to avoid that, you need to put these little bridge pieces. In this font, they put bridges in for a lot of places. Technically, you don't need it on a T or a U or a V. You really only need it where things are going to have a center, like a R, this A, the B, D. So how can we make a stencil font in Design Space? So I'm going to type up the word birthday. Because I knew I wanted to cut this with the Encore paper, I really wanted to find a thin font so I could really challenge the paper and test its ability. And then I'm going to resize the word birthday so it just fits in the corner of this card front. So I want to turn this font into a stencil font. And stencil fonts are going to have a little bridge so that it doesn't cut away those centers. So first I'm going to turn off this rectangle that's representing the card front. To make a stencil bridge, if you're using a different design software, they might have a tool to just put that in. Since Design Space does not, I can just add a square. And I'm going to make the width of that square 0.025. So this long skinny rectangle is what I'm going to use to create my bridges. I'm going to make this a different color just so it stands out. And I'm going to need one here. And I'm just going to copy and paste because I'll need one on this one. And I'll need one over here. So what I'm going to do, I can either right click and say ungroup. I can go up here and ungroup, or I can use advanced to say ungroup to letters. All of them are going to get me the same results. Instead of this being one word, they're going to be separate letters. So now I can select the A, hold my shift key, and grab this bridge line, and I can use combine and say subtract, and cut that right through there. So for this to work, you can only have two things selected, which is why we had to ungroup these to individual letters, because then I could pick one letter and the bridge. Could have used slice, but I would have extra pieces that I would have to manually remove. So that's kind of why I like using subtract. And by holding my shift key on my keyboard, I can select more than one thing at a time. All right, so now I have a stencil font. I can select all of this, say combine, and weld it. The reason I'm using weld is because this is going to make it one continuous object, even though the pieces are not touching. And there's a reason that I want the Design Space software to think of the word birthday as all one word again. I can select all of this and use combine and say subtract, and it cut that through. So the only reason that worked is because Design Space only saw me as selecting two things. So if those letters would have been individual, it wouldn't have let me do that because I would have had more than two things selected. I also typed up the word happy multiple times using the font I Love Glitter. And if you've never used the font I Love Glitter to add those little swooshes to the front and the back of letters, make sure you go check out my tutorial specifically on how to use the I Love Glitter font. Originally, I was just going to put an offset around this design and paste this onto a pre-existing card front. But then I decided to cut the entire rectangle, that's the blue background, from cardstock. So I am going to go up here and unlock the size of this rectangle so that I can stretch it into being a full card shape. And that is going to be 8.5 by 5.5. So that 8.5 by 5.5 rectangle is my card base. I can then add a score line and make that 5.5 inches long and rotate it. So now if I take both of those and select them both and use align, I can center those horizontally so they're perfectly centered over the top of each other. I'm going to then click attach, and that's going to hold the placement position of that score line on the card base. Now I can move all the elements that I had grouped together for the card front over on top of the base and use arrange to bring those to the front. Now it's time to click make it and start cutting. I want to give a full disclaimer here. Do you remember at the beginning of my video where I said I've been sick recently? Well, I forgot to actually record the cutting of this design. I'm blaming it on the cold medication, but really it cuts beautifully. What you want to see is the end results. So yay, I do have those. This was my very, very, very first cut. And while it did cut, some of the layers didn't pop all the way out. So I did play with some cut settings, which I'm going to share with you. And then you will see the end result of how beautiful this cut out. So next up, I tried the medium cardstock setting, which is for 80-pound weight. And that is the weight of this product. And you can see it did cut it, but there were some pieces that were kind of not separating all the way. And honestly, I think it's because of how tiny of details I did. So I continued to play. Now that I have cut all of my design out once, I have found starting with the medium cardstock was a good cut setting, but I was going really small. I mean, look how fine those details are. So I did do a double cut. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make a custom setting. So I am going to go over here to my materials settings, manage custom materials. And I'm going to connect by Bluetooth. What I started with was the cardstock 8-pound. You can see that the cut pressure and the multi-cut information is here. So let's scroll down here. So I want to add a new material. Okay, and I'm going to call it Encore because that is the name of this paper. Okay, so for Encore, I want to start with the same settings I had for my cardstock 80 pounds. So the cut pressure is 299. Cut pressure is 299, which sounds like such a weird number for me. Like, why not go 300? I wish I could just type in the number. And then I'm going to say a multi-cut of 2 times with my fine point blade. And now I'm going to save that. So now my Encore paper by 12 by 12 cardstock shop is saved in my settings. So now I can say done. This is a great process to do. Really test your cuts, and then once you determine the best cut settings, make your own custom cut setting. So now when I click make it and say continue, after I connect, I can browse all materials and find my custom. They don't make it super easy to find. This is kind of actually good because now it's showing you the troubleshooting. What I ended up doing was using the little search bar and typing in Encore. Oh, there it goes. So there's Encore. I'm going to bookmark it. So now under my bookmarked, it's in. Perfect. I can pick it. And now I can cut. So what I'm showing you here is that stencil font we created. And I'm using a pin to really show you how tiny that little line is that's connecting, but it cut it and it didn't rip it. Okay, my center of my R is kind of poking forward, but when I glue it, it'll stick down. But will you look at how tiny that connector bridge line is? And it cut it. Now I want to show you how to go back in and change the typo that I made for the name. So I'm going to go back into my material settings. And you do have to connect to your machine. Just kind of frustrating if you're just setting up the settings, like you're not necessarily going to cut something. So now I can scroll until I find my Encore setting. And if you can't find it, you can use the search tool, but there it is. So I just click the little edit button and then I can change the name of it. And I'm going to actually call it Encore 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop so I know that this is the product or the cut setting for this very specific product. If I found a different product that maybe started with the same settings, I could copy that settings like I did to create the Encore one to create additional settings. So this is great when you're using non-Cricut brand material. Make custom settings. So now I'm just going to take this piece that I cut with the stencil letters, cut through the piece and put some double-sided tape on it with my tape runner. And then I'm going to use my glue pen and come in around some of these letters because I want to make sure things like the center of those B's stick down or the center of the R. So this pen is a Zig glue pen. I love it because now I can write like I would with a pen. Instead of ink, it's glue coming out. So super helpful. I can literally just put little dots where I need it. So now I'm going to center this on my hard base. And after that, I am going to start to attach the words happy. I did several colors of the word happy, and because I wanted to make sure I was lining those up nice, I did that off camera so my old eyes could be right on top of things. But again, I'm pointing out just how tiny those little bridges are. And once you see the word happy on here, you'll see how tiny and delicate that is. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you learned something about Cricut Design Space. Maybe you learned how to make a custom setting so that you can make projects like this and not have to try to remember what settings did I use last time. I do want to mention again, the word birthday and all of the words happy were cut from the Encore cardstock. And remember to use my coupon code when you shop at 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop. So hurry up and go buy some Encore because you can see it cuts so good with fine details. Before you go, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below. I love to hear from you.